music theory is dumb. Let's discuss that. Welcome back to Liam Taylor Guitar, the YouTube channel for people who want to play guitar or make music and don't mind hearing the brutally honest truths about how to do that. You know, for an improvised intro, that was actually pretty good. Might keep it. Today we're talking about music theory in a kind of broad sense, because music theory is the thing to hate about music creation. It's complicated, its rules can change depending on the style of music or the time period in question. It uses various sets of language, sometimes it's Latin, sometimes it's German, and it's guarded by people who seemingly don't want you or I to access it. There is a recent trend of music theory YouTubers making it fun and accessible, which I'm personally thrilled to see and get an awful lot of pleasure out of. But the concept of music theory as a standalone thing that can exist separate from music performance or instrumental skill or composition is dumb.
More technical is not the same as better. Like, I know a lot of really complicated things, and then I'll go compose music like Rob Zombie, and I'll go like do simple things because that's what sounds good to me. There's this tendency when you learn to do a lot of things to use those things, and you sort of, because it's like, oh, I know how to do tritone substitutions. Oh, I know how to like modulate with a diminished seventh chord. Oh, I know how to do like, I don't know, contrapuntal voice leading in like every section of my song. And it's just like, you don't need that.
My issue isn't with music theory itself. My issue is when people refer to it as a separate entity from music creation. That's where the problem is. So if that's something you've found yourself doing, I'm hoping that by the end of this video you might start to apply music theory ideas to your practice rather than, I don't know, acquiring knowledge for its own sake, I guess. Music theory gives us a language with which to describe how we want something to sound, or even what we like about a piece of music. For example, a 16th note ascending D major triad on viola can basically only mean one thing. Also, you kind of sound like a wizard to other people who don't know what that is. But actually that's another problem. There's a lot of terms that we can use to describe some very similar things, and experts will take offense if you get it ever so slightly wrong. But music developed independently across several civilizations, all with their own languages, developing their own instruments and musical traditions. So anything these cultures share by accident will be described with different words. Like any language would describe something different to any other language, but are any of those wrong or right? Not really, it just depends what country you're in or the context of the conversation. We can also see some different languages in genre. For example, a skank guitar rhythm is a key element of ska and reggae music, but if you wanted a jazz or rock or metal guitarist to play it, you'd have to describe it as an upstroke or an offbeat. Actually, there's a lot of ways to describe that, but none of those guitarists would know what a skank rhythm is unless they had at some point learnt about ska. Another example, as Michael Maynor commented recently, 2 notes is a dyad, which is true, but I'd call a pair of notes a double stop because I'm a guitarist. A term which comes from classical string players, but guitarists might also call any pair of notes a power chord, even though technically that's a root and a 5. And of course, you have the non-expert term, a pair of notes. See what I mean? None of these are necessarily wrong, although technically dyad is the most accurate in general music terms, but I'd say fewer people have heard of it. Is that because there's millions of guitarists out there? Probably more than any other instrument? Yeah, I think so. So, if something is popularly believed to be true, does that make it true? That's beyond me, frankly. But power chord is probably the most common term for a pair of notes, even though technically it's the least accurate.
I don't tend to think theory is primarily about composition in the first place, but when it comes to composition, I think the point of theory is to allow you to bring out the ideas that are already there and to sort of fill gaps in creativity more than to show off how many cool things you can do at the same time. Most listeners aren't trained to listen to the sort of hyper complex, like post-tonal whatevers that like people like me obsess over. And even like me, honestly, like, again, it's not what I listen to for fun even. It's what I listen to for work sometimes.
Sure.
But like, I'm much more interested in what they're doing, like from a structural perspective, than I am in actually like listening to it.
Music theory is dumb. It's really fun, and I find the history of composition fascinating. I love finding patterns in scales and chords, and I love knowing new names for things. But unless you're actually applying all of that to music creation, then you're doing it wrong. If you're just gaining knowledge in order to win arguments on the internet, then no, you're not an expert. You're kind of just a dick. If you'd like to hear more about this idea, then you can check out my recent interview with 12-tone videos. Corey has some very similar ideas about the practical application of music theory, which is refreshing to hear, considering their YouTube channel is entirely and very specifically about music theory. That's all from me for this week. Thanks for hanging out. You should 100% subscribe to this channel if you like guitar, if you want to learn more about practically applying music theory, composition. I do a lot of stuff with Cubase, I do a lot of sound design stuff, I do a lot of Simpsons remixes. I really enjoy remixing Simpsons, so that's going to keep happening. Yeah. New videos like this, or sometimes the Simpsons remix, come out every Friday at 4 p.m. GMT. If you want to see those when they go live, in addition to subscribing, you can hit the stupid bell icon. That means you get a notification on YouTube when I upload something, which is twice, sometimes thrice weekly. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you next week. Toodaloo. One way that drummers might indicate that a different section is coming up is by changing the cymbal they're playing. So we have options. We could either change to a ride cymbal or we could change to a crash cymbal. I happen to think that when you have eighth notes on an open hi-hat, it sounds really busy and crowded, and I don't like it. Not a fan of that.